Why do you have my sister's picture? Claire Bennett's voice was barely above a whisper, but it stopped Ethan Walker's hand halfway to the coffee pot. It was 6:17 on a cold Saturday morning in Nashville, and less than 11 hours earlier, Ethan had not known the woman standing barefoot in his kitchen even existed. Now the stranger he had brought home, because she was too drunk to safely get herself anywhere, was staring at the framed photograph above his bookcase, as if she had just seen someone return from the dead. Ethan set the coffee pot down. "What did you say?" Claire did not answer. Her face had gone pale. In the photograph, Ethan was 33, wearing the only suit he had owned then, and beside him stood Hannah, laughing into the Tennessee sunlight on their wedding day. Hannah Walker, his wife, Lily's mother, gone 4 years. Claire crossed the room slowly. That woman. Her finger trembled toward the photograph. Who is she? Ethan's expression changed. My wife. Claire finally looked at him. Where is she? The kitchen became very quiet. 8-year-old Lily sat at the table in pink pajamas, carefully pouring too much syrup over a pancake shaped vaguely like a star. She looked from Claire to her father. Ethan's eyes returned to the photograph. She died 4 years ago. Claire gripped the back of a chair. For a woman who had built a reputation on never losing control, she suddenly looked as though the floor had shifted beneath her. Lily tilted her head. Did you know my mom? Claire stared at the little girl, and something in Lily's face seemed to frighten her more than the photograph had. I don't know, Claire said. It was an odd answer, and Ethan heard it. 11 hours earlier, none of these questions existed. At 7:06 Friday evening, Ethan had been leaving the Grand Ellison Hotel through the service entrance after finishing a restoration job on a century-old walnut staircase. His hands smelled faintly of wood oil. His work jacket had sawdust along one sleeve, and Lily was spending the night with her best friend 3 blocks from home. Ethan's only plan was takeout barbecue and an early night. Then he noticed a woman sitting alone on a stone bench beneath the hotel awning. Black evening dress, expensive coat folded beside her, one heel dangling from 2 fingers. She looked completely out of place beside the loading entrance. Ethan almost kept walking. Then she stood, took 2 uncertain steps, and stopped with one hand against the brick wall. Ma'am, are you okay? She looked at him with unfocused blue eyes. Perfect, she said. That's usually what people say when they're not. She gave a tired laugh. Her phone was dead. Her driver had apparently left after a confused exchange she could not explain clearly, and she could not remember the address of the hotel suite her assistant had booked. Ethan did not know her name meant anything in Nashville. He did not know Claire Bennett ran Bennett Hospitality Group, or that the ballroom 50 yards behind them belonged to her company. He only knew his late wife would never have forgiven him for leaving a vulnerable stranger alone at night. So Ethan made one quiet decision. He took Claire home, and by sunrise, a photograph on his bookcase was about to connect 2 families that had spent years believing the other one was gone. Claire did not leave after breakfast. She stood near the bookcase with her coffee untouched while Ethan watched her study Hannah's photograph as though enough staring might make the past explain itself. Lily had gone upstairs to change, leaving the house unusually quiet. You said she was your sister, Ethan said. Claire shook her head slowly. I said the first thing my mind recognized. I have seen her before, but I do not understand how. Ethan's expression hardened. That is not the same thing. No, it is not. Claire reached for her coat. I need to figure out what I remember before I say something I cannot take back. Ethan did not stop her. 4 years earlier, on another cold morning, Hannah Walker had been sitting at this same kitchen table, helping 6-year-old Lily draw a family tree for school. Ethan remembered the page because one entire side had been nearly empty. His parents were there along with an uncle in Kentucky and 2 cousins in Ohio. Hannah's side contained only her name. Lily had asked where Grandma and Grandpa were. Hannah had smiled, but Ethan hadn't known that smile. It was the one she used when protecting their daughter from an adult truth. Far away, she had said. Later that night, Ethan asked whether she wanted to tell Lily more. Hannah stood at the sink with her hands in warm dishwater. Someday. You always say someday. She turned toward him. Because some families know how to love you only after they have lost you. Ethan never forgot the sentence. He also never asked again. Hannah had entered his life at 28 with 2 suitcases, a nursing certificate, and almost no stories about where she came from. She said her family had money but very little warmth. She had walked away before meeting Ethan and wanted nothing from them. He respected that boundary because Hannah respected his. Their marriage was built less on questions than on the certainty that either could speak when ready. Then time made the decision for them. During Hannah's final months, Ethan reduced his contracting work and learned the small routines that made difficult days easier. He packed Lily's lunches before sunrise, handled school pickup, kept track of appointments, and sat beside Hannah after Lily went to sleep. Hannah never asked him to contact her family. Once near the end, Ethan offered. She took his hand and said, "Promise me Lily gets a childhood before she inherits anybody else's regrets." He promised. After Hannah died, Ethan placed her personal things in a cedar box and pushed it onto the highest shelf of his bedroom closet. He had opened it only twice in 4 years. That Saturday morning, after Claire drove away, he opened it a third time. Inside were Hannah's wedding ring, old photographs turned face down, a silver pendant, and several envelopes tied together with faded blue ribbon. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and untied them carefully. Most were unopened bills and old notes. Then he found one envelope beneath the others. No stamp, no postmark. Hannah's handwriting crossed the front in neat black ink. 2 words made Ethan forget the cold coffee downstairs. Margaret Bennett. He stared at the name for a long time. Bennett, the same last name Claire had given him before leaving. Downstairs, Lily called. "Dad, Claire forgot her scarf." Ethan did not answer. He turned the envelope over. It had been sealed but never sent. Claire Bennett drove 12 miles toward downtown Nashville before realizing she had passed her exit. She pulled into an empty grocery store parking lot and turned off the engine. For nearly a minute, she simply sat there with both hands resting on the steering wheel. Hannah. She could not remember where she had first learned the name because, until that morning, she had never known it. What she remembered was a photograph. Claire had been 9 years old when she found it inside a drawer in her mother's dressing room. 2 girls stood beneath a magnolia tree. One was Claire, perhaps 4 years old. The other was much older, maybe 15, with chestnut hair and the same blue eyes Claire saw every morning in the mirror. Margaret Bennett had entered the room before Claire could turn the photograph over. She had taken it from her daughter's hands so quickly that Claire remembered the movement more clearly than the picture. "Who is she?" Claire had asked. Margaret had stared at the older girl for several seconds. "Someone who is no longer part of our lives." That was all. The photograph disappeared. Years passed. Claire learned that the Bennett family could make uncomfortable things disappear with remarkable efficiency. Questions became silence. Silence became habit. By 36, Claire controlled 23 hotels across 6 states, negotiated contracts worth millions of dollars, and could identify a weak quarterly forecast before her finance team finished presenting it. None of those skills helped her understand why a dead woman's wedding photograph had been sitting inside a carpenter's modest home. At 9:30 that morning, Claire entered the executive floor of Bennett Hospitality Group. Her assistant, Rebecca, looked surprised. "I thought you were taking the weekend." "So did I." Claire walked into her office and closed the door. Nashville spread beneath the windows, bright and ordinary. She opened the company archive, then the private family records connected to the Bennett estate. She searched Hannah. Nothing. Hannah Bennett. Nothing. She tried birth records stored in old insurance files. Still nothing. The absence felt deliberate. At 10:14, Claire called her mother. Margaret answered on the 4th ring. "Claire, is something wrong?" Claire looked at the city. "Do you remember a woman named Hannah?" Silence came through the phone so completely that Claire checked the screen to see whether the call had disconnected. "Mother, where did you hear that name?" Margaret asked. Her voice had changed. "I met someone." "Who?" Claire hesitated. She thought of Ethan's guarded face, Lily's curious eyes, and the photograph. A man named Ethan Walker. Another silence. This one was shorter. "Claire, listen to me carefully. Do not go back to that house." Claire stood. "You know him." I said, "Do not go back." Margaret ended the call. Claire stared at the phone. Her mother had spent 64 years mastering composure. Claire had heard her remain calm through funerals, lawsuits, failed acquisitions, and the collapse of a hotel deal that had cost the family $8 million. She had never heard fear in Margaret Bennett's voice until now. Claire opened her purse to find her car keys, and something soft brushed her hand. A pale blue scarf. Not hers. Lily must have tucked it there by mistake when they gathered Claire's things that morning. Claire lifted it and noticed a tiny silver thread caught along one edge. Suddenly, she remembered something else from childhood. The older girl in the photograph had been wearing a pendant. A small silver circle divided by a narrow line through its center. At Ethan's house, Lily had worn the same shape around her neck. Claire grabbed her coat and headed for the elevator. Across town, Ethan was still sitting beside the cedar box when Lily appeared in his bedroom doorway, holding Claire's forgotten scarf. "Dad," she said, "do you think she knew Mom?" Ethan looked down at the sealed envelope addressed to Margaret Bennett. For the first time in 4 years, he was no longer certain he knew the answer. Claire returned to Ethan's house at 11:23 that morning, carrying no assistant, no driver, and none of the confidence people usually associated with her name. Ethan saw her through the front window before she reached the porch. He placed Hannah's unopened letter back inside the cedar box and carried it downstairs. When he opened the door, Claire held out Lily's pale blue scarf. "I think this belongs here." Ethan took it, but did not move aside. "You drove across town for a scarf?" "No," Claire met his eyes. "I came back because my mother told me not to." That answer earned her several seconds of silence. Then Lily appeared behind Ethan. "Claire." The warmth in the girl's voice made Claire look past him. Lily was sitting on the living room rug with colored pencils scattered around a poster board. Across the top, she had written "My family" in careful purple letters. Ethan stepped aside reluctantly. Claire entered. The house smelled like coffee, maple syrup, and cedar from the box upstairs. It felt nothing like the places Claire knew. Nothing had been selected by a designer. Nothing seemed arranged to impress anyone. Yet everywhere she looked, someone had belonged there. A child's backpack hung from a chair. Work boots rested beside the door. Hannah's photograph remained above the bookcase. "School project," Lily explained, pointing at the poster. "I have Dad's side, but Mom's side is hard." Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Claire noticed. "Lily, why do you not finish your drawing upstairs?" he said. "I need Mom's necklace first." Before Ethan could answer, Lily hurried toward the hallway and returned with a small wooden jewelry box. She opened it on the coffee table. Claire stopped breathing for a second. Inside lay a silver pendant, circular and plain except for a narrow line running through the center. "Mom gave it to me before she went to heaven," Lily said. "Dad says I can wear it on special days." Claire crouched beside the table without touching it. She had seen that symbol before, not only in the childhood photograph. 3 months earlier, while helping Margaret organize documents after a plumbing leak damaged part of the Bennett estate, Claire had opened her mother's private safe. Inside, beside old legal papers and her father's watch, rested another pendant. Same silver circle, same narrow dividing line. Only Margaret's had a tiny notch along the right edge, as if the design were incomplete. "Where did Hannah get this?" Claire asked. Ethan's voice cooled. "From her mother." Claire looked up. "What was Hannah's last name before you married?" Ethan already knew why she was asking. The envelope upstairs had made coincidence difficult to believe. Still, saying the name aloud felt like opening a door Hannah had deliberately kept closed. "Bennett." Claire sat back slowly. Lily looked between them. "That is your name?" "Yes," Claire said. Ethan folded his arms. "Now tell me what you know." Claire hesitated. "When I was 9, I found a photograph of a girl who looked like Hannah. My mother took it away and refused to tell me who she was. This morning, I asked her about Hannah. She told me never to come back here." Ethan's expression changed. "Your mother knows my wife." "I think she does." "You think?" "My family is very good at hiding things, Ethan." "Then uncover yours without dragging Lily into it." Claire stood. "I'm trying to. She is 8 years old. She is not evidence." The words landed quietly. Claire glanced at Lily and understood immediately that he was right. "I am sorry." There was no argument in her voice, no executive certainty. She picked up her purse. "Lily, touched the pendant. Claire. Claire turned. If your mom knew my mom, maybe she has pictures. Claire could not answer. Ethan walked her to the door. Before leaving, Claire said, "There's one more thing. My mother owns a pendant almost identical to Lily's." Ethan went still. How identical? Like two pieces of the same design. Upstairs, hidden inside the cedar box, the sealed letter addressed to Margaret Bennett waited in Hannah's handwriting. Ethan looked toward the staircase, then back at Claire. For the first time, he wondered whether Hannah had left him a secret or a map. Claire did not contact Ethan again that weekend. On Monday morning, she entered Bennett Hospitality Group before 7 and spent 2 hours searching records that seemed designed to lead nowhere. Hannah Bennett appeared in no employee files, no family foundation photographs, and no digital estate records Claire could access. It was as if someone had carefully removed a life without leaving the shape of the missing pieces behind. At 9:15, Rebecca reminded Claire that Bennett Hospitality sponsored the fall reading program at Lily's elementary school, and that Claire was expected at Wednesday's student showcase. Claire almost canceled. Then she saw the school name. She called Margaret instead. "Come with me Wednesday." Her mother was silent. "Where?" "A school event." "Claire, you know whose school?" Margaret inhaled slowly. "I told you to leave that family alone. You told me nothing. That is the problem." Wednesday afternoon, Ethan arrived at the school gymnasium at 3:40 with sawdust still caught along one cuff. Lily had spent 3 weeks preparing a family reading project about people who shaped their lives. Her poster stood on an easel beside the stage, covered with drawings, photographs, and handwritten captions. One photograph showed Hannah kneeling beside a 6-year-old Lily in their backyard. Ethan stopped in front of it longer than he intended. Across the gym, Claire entered with Margaret. The older woman wore a simple navy coat and moved with the controlled posture Claire had inherited from her. Margaret had agreed only after Claire promised they would remain near the back. Then Margaret saw Lily. The girl stood beside her poster, listening seriously while another student explained a book. Without thinking, Lily reached beneath her collar, found Hannah's pendant, and rolled it between her thumb and forefinger. Margaret stopped walking. Her handbag slipped slightly down her arm. "Mother," Claire whispered. Margaret did not answer. Lily tilted her head while listening, then tucked a loose strand of hair behind her left ear. Margaret reached for the nearest folding chair and sat down. Her eyes filled, but she made no sound. "She does that when she is thinking," Margaret said. Claire looked at Lily. "Who?" Margaret closed her eyes. "Hannah. One word. Nothing more." Claire felt the mystery change shape. This was no longer a photograph her mother happened to recognize. Margaret knew Hannah well enough to remember the smallest habit of her hands. At that moment, Ethan turned from Lily's display and saw them. His expression did not change immediately. That made Claire feel worse. He walked across the gym slowly and stopped several feet away. "You brought her here." "Ethan, I can explain. You knew I did not want Lily involved." Margaret stood. "Mr. Walker, I only wanted to see her." Ethan looked at the older woman for the first time. Something in Margaret's face seemed familiar, not because he had met her before, but because grief sometimes gave unrelated people the same expression. "You know Hannah?" he asked. Margaret's lips parted, but no answer came. Claire stepped forward. "I thought seeing Lily might make my mother tell the truth." Ethan looked at her. "So you used my daughter to get an answer?" Claire flinched. "That was not what I intended." "Intent does not change what you did." His voice stayed low because children were nearby. That restraint made every word heavier. "Lily is not a key to whatever your family locked away." "You are right." Claire said it immediately. Ethan had expected resistance. Instead, she lowered her eyes. "I crossed the line." Before he could answer, Lily called for him from across the gym. Ethan looked toward his daughter, then back at Claire. "Please leave." Margaret took one step forward. "Ethan." He stopped. She had never spoken his name before. "There are things about Hannah you deserve to know." Ethan's face hardened. "Then you should have told her while she was alive." Margaret went completely still. Ethan walked back toward Lily. Claire guided her mother toward the exit without another word. Outside, Margaret reached the sidewalk and stopped beneath a maple tree. "You should not have brought me here," she whispered. Claire looked at her. Who was Hannah? Margaret stared through the glass doors at Lily. Someone I failed. That evening, Ethan opened the cedar box again. He did not touch the letter. Downstairs, Lily was humming while finishing her family poster. Then she called up the stairs. Dad, I need something from Mom's box. Ethan carried it down. Lily searched beneath the photographs until she found an old envelope Ethan had never noticed because it was folded inside a birthday card. On the front, in Hannah's handwriting, were 3 words for Lily someday. Lily held the envelope with both hands, waiting for Ethan to tell her whether she could open it. For 4 years, he had tried to make Hannah's memory something their daughter could visit without being trapped inside it. Photographs stayed on the walls. Her favorite recipes stayed in the kitchen drawer. Her birthday remained a day for strawberry cake because Hannah had believed chocolate was overrated. But this was different. These were words Hannah had chosen for a future she knew she might not see. Ethan sat beside Lily at the kitchen table. We read it together. Lily nodded. He opened the envelope carefully. Inside was 1 sheet of cream paper folded twice. Hannah's handwriting was steady. My sweet Lily, if you're reading this, you're probably old enough to ask questions your dad cannot answer, because I never gave him all the answers either. That was my choice, not his. Ethan stopped. Lily looked up. Keep going, Dad. He swallowed and continued. Hannah wrote about courage, kindness, and how families could become complicated when love mixed with pride. She told Lily never to measure herself by what people owned or what name appeared on a building. Then Ethan reached the final lines. There's a woman named Margaret Bennett who may someday learn about you. If that happens, please do not grow up believing you are unwanted. You were loved before you were born. Some people simply waited too long to be brave. Ethan lowered the page. Lily stared at the name. Margaret. Is that Claire's mom? Yes. Is she my grandma? Ethan could have lied. Instead, he chose the only answer he had. I do not know. Lily touched Hannah's pendant beneath her shirt. But Mom knew her. Yes. Upstairs was the other letter, the one addressed directly to Margaret. Ethan brought it down and placed it beside Lily's. He still did not open it. That letter belonged to a conversation he had avoided because he was angry, and because anger sometimes felt safer than discovering that the dead had carried truths the living could not repair. At 7:12, Ethan called Claire. She answered immediately. Is Lily all right? The question softened something in him, despite himself. She found a letter from Hannah. Silence. What did it say? Your mother's name? Claire did not speak for several seconds. Ethan, I am sorry about the school. I know. That does not make it acceptable. No, another pause. Bring Margaret tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. Just the 2 of you. Claire arrived at 9:58. Margaret stood beside her on Ethan's porch wearing the same navy coat from the school, but without the polished certainty she had carried into the gym. Ethan let them inside. Lily was at a friend's house 2 doors down. He had made that decision deliberately. On the kitchen table lay Hannah's letter to Lily, the sealed envelope for Margaret, and the silver pendant. Margaret saw the pendant first. Her hand rose to her mouth. Then she saw her name on the envelope. She sat without being asked. She wrote to me. She never sent it, Ethan said. Margaret looked at him. May I? Ethan pushed the envelope across the table. Margaret broke the seal. Claire watched her mother read in silence. Halfway down the page, Margaret closed her eyes. At the bottom, she pressed the paper flat with both palms as though it might disappear. What does it say? Claire asked. Margaret looked at her daughter. Hannah wanted me to know about Lily. Ethan remained standing. Who was my wife to you? Margaret turned toward Hannah's wedding photograph. Years of practice control finally left her face. She was my daughter. Claire did not move. Ethan did not either. Margaret looked back at Claire, and her next words were quieter. And she was your sister. Claire stared at Margaret, as if the words had changed the dimensions of the room. My sister. Margaret nodded once. Hannah was 11 years older than you. Claire looked toward the wedding photograph. Suddenly the girl beneath the magnolia tree was no longer a nameless figure from childhood. She had a name, a husband, a daughter, and an entire life Claire had been denied the chance to know. Ethan remained standing across the table. Start at the beginning. Margaret folded Hannah's letter carefully. Hannah was 22 when she left home. Your father believed every Bennett had an obligation to the family. The right schools, the right career, the right people. Hannah wanted none of it. Margaret looked at Claire. She wanted to become a nurse. Your father wanted her in the company. And you? Claire asked. Margaret's eyes dropped. I wanted peace. Ethan understood the answer before she explained it. Margaret had not thrown Hannah out. She had done something quieter. She had stood aside while someone else made staying impossible. Hannah left. Margaret continued. At first, I thought she would come back after a week. Then a month. Then Christmas. Your father refused to call her. I told myself she needed time. How much time? Ethan asked. Margaret looked at him. Years. Claire sat down slowly. Why did you never tell me? Because by the time you were old enough to ask, silence had become the structure holding our family together. Claire gave a small, disbelieving laugh. You mean the lie? Margaret accepted it without defense. Yes. Ethan pointed toward Hannah's letter. She wrote that you might someday learn about Lily. Why would she think you did not already know? Margaret opened her handbag and removed a small velvet pouch. From it, she took a silver pendant. Claire had seen it in the safe. Margaret placed it beside Lily's pendant. The two circles aligned perfectly, their narrow lines meeting at the center. I gave Hannah one when she turned 16. I kept the other. Margaret touched neither. After your father died 5 years ago, I finally tried to find her. Ethan's jaw tightened. Hannah had died 4 years ago. You had a year. I know. Margaret's voice nearly disappeared. I found an old address in Chattanooga. She had already moved. I hired someone to locate her, then stopped the search. Why? Claire asked. Margaret looked ashamed. I was afraid she would tell me she wanted nothing to do with me. I chose uncertainty over rejection. Ethan turned toward the window. For years of raising Lily alone had taught him that love was mostly made of ordinary decisions. Getting up when exhausted. Showing up when inconvenient. Staying when leaving would be easier. Margaret had possessed every resource to find Hannah and lacked the one thing money could not purchase afterward. Courage at the right time. You could have known her, Ethan said. Yes. You could have known Lily from the day she was born. Margaret's eyes filled. Yes. And Hannah died thinking you never came. Margaret lowered her head. Claire said nothing. For once, there was no executive solution available to her. No contract, no acquisition, no check that could repair for missing years. Ethan picked up Lily's pendant and closed his hand around it. Margaret, I understand what you lost. But Lily is not your second chance with Hannah. Margaret looked up. I know, and being her grandmother does not give you the right to enter her life because you finally decided you are ready. The balance in the room shifted quietly. Margaret Bennett had spent decades in a family whose name opened doors across Nashville. Here, in Ethan Walker's small kitchen, there was only one door that mattered, and she could not open it herself. Then the front door clicked. Lily had returned early. She stepped inside, saw Margaret, and stopped. Her eyes moved to the two matching pendants on the table. Dad, she asked softly, is she my grandma? Lily's question remained in the kitchen for several seconds before Ethan answered. Yes, he said. Margaret is your grandmother, and Claire is your aunt. Lily looked at Claire first, then Margaret, then at the matching silver pendants on the table. She did not run forward. She did not cry. She simply pulled out a chair and sat down, processing the truth with the same quiet concentration Hannah once had. Why did Mom never tell me? Margaret lowered herself into the chair across from her. Because the adults in her family made mistakes long before you were born. Lily frowned. Did you make one? Margaret could have softened the answer. She did not. More than one. Ethan watched her carefully. I loved your mother, Margaret continued. But sometimes I care more about keeping everyone happy than protecting the person who needed me. Hannah left home, and I waited for her to come back instead of going after her. I waited too long. Lily touched her pendant. Was Mom mad at you? Margaret's eyes moved to Hannah's letter. I think she was hurt. She had every right to be. Lily considered that, then asked the question no adult in the room expected. Do you have pictures of her when she was little? Margaret's face changed. Hundreds. That afternoon, Margaret left without asking to hug Lily, without offering money. and without making promises. Claire stayed only long enough to apologize to Ethan again. "I thought if my mother saw Lily, the truth would come out," she said on the porch. "I treated your family like a problem I could solve." Ethan leaned against the doorframe. "That is probably useful when you run a company. It is less useful with people. You are learning." Claire almost smiled. Slowly, 3 days later, a plain cardboard box arrived at Ethan's house. There was no expensive gift inside. No check. No legal document. Only photographs. Hannah at 5 years old holding a fishing pole beside a Tennessee lake. Hannah missing 2 front teeth. Hannah in a high school choir dress. Hannah asleep beside a much younger Claire on a living room couch. Beneath them were home videos transferred onto a small drive and a note from Margaret. These belonged to Lily. They always did. That evening, Ethan and Lily watched the first video. Hannah was 16, laughing because someone behind the camera had burned pancakes. Lily laughed too. Ethan had not heard that particular laugh in 4 years. Claire began visiting on Sundays, but only after Ethan invited her. She arrived without an assistant and usually brought nothing more impressive than groceries. At first, she sat awkwardly at the kitchen table while Lily asked questions about Hannah. Then she started helping organize the photographs into an album. Claire knew almost nothing about her older sister's adult life. Ethan knew almost nothing about Hannah's childhood. Together, they slowly built the missing years between them. One Sunday, Lily fell asleep on the couch, surrounded by photographs. Claire covered her with a blanket and returned to the kitchen. Ethan was washing coffee mugs. "You do not have to do that," Claire said. "Do what?" "Keep letting me come back." Ethan dried his hands. "I'm not doing it for you." Claire nodded. "I know. Lily wants to know her family." "And what do you want?" Ethan looked toward the living room, where his daughter slept beneath a photograph of Hannah at 17. "I want nobody to make her regret opening that door." Claire met his eyes. "Then I will make sure I am not the reason she does." She did not ask him to trust her. That mattered. Weeks passed. Margaret attended Lily's school concert and sat quietly in the 3rd row. Claire helped Lily bake Hannah's strawberry cake and ruined the first one. Ethan laughed before he could stop himself. Claire looked at him, surprised, and for one brief moment there was no dead wife, no hidden sister, no Bennett fortune between them. Just 2 adults in a flower-covered kitchen and a little girl laughing at both. Later that night, Claire found an old photograph lying beside the album. Hannah stood beneath the magnolia tree, 17 years old, holding 4-year-old Claire's hand. On the back, in Hannah's handwriting, were 6 words Claire had never seen before. "Take care of my little sister." 1 year later, Lily Walker carried an extra chair into the dining room and placed it between her seat and the window. Ethan looked up from the roast chicken he was carving. "We already have enough chairs, kiddo." "I know." Lily disappeared into the hallway and returned holding Hannah's wedding photograph against her chest. She set it carefully on the empty chair, angled toward the table. "Now we do." Ethan stopped carving. For years, an empty place had meant only absence. Lily had somehow turned one into belonging. The doorbell rang at 6:12. Margaret stood outside, holding a homemade apple pie that leaned noticeably to one side. "I follow the recipe," she said. Claire appeared behind her carrying vanilla ice cream. She did. The recipe should probably apologize. Margaret gave her daughter a look, and Lily laughed from inside the house. That sound had become familiar to them all. Margaret no longer arrived in a chauffeured car. She no longer asked what Lily needed. Before asking what Lily wanted to tell her, she had learned that being a grandmother was not a title recovered by blood. It was built through Tuesday phone calls, school concerts, badly baked pies, and remembering that Lily hated raisins but loved cinnamon. Claire had changed in quieter ways. Bennett Hospitality still had 23 hotels. She still commanded boardrooms and read financial reports before sunrise. But Sunday afternoons belonged to a small house where nobody cared about quarterly earnings. She had become Aunt Claire before becoming anything else. She helped Lily finish the album of Hannah's childhood. She learned which photographs made Ethan smile and which ones made him go quiet. She never asked him to remove any of them. That mattered more than she knew. Dinner was loud in the ordinary way good dinners become loud. Lily described a science project. Margaret complained about Claire reorganizing her kitchen. Claire accused Margaret of owning spices older than Lily. Ethan listened, occasionally smiling, until he realized something almost frightening in its simplicity. He was happy, not because he had forgotten Hannah, not because grief had disappeared. He had simply stopped believing happiness was a betrayal. After dinner, Margaret and Lily carried plates into the kitchen. Claire remained beside the empty chair, looking at Hannah's photograph. "I used to think finding her would give me something back," she said. Ethan stood beside her. "Did it?" Claire considered the question. "No, I cannot get those years back." She looked toward the kitchen, where Lily was teaching Margaret the correct way to load a dishwasher. "But I got to know who she became." Ethan nodded. "She would have liked you." Claire smiled faintly. "You cannot know that. Hannah did not take care of my little sister about people she disliked." Claire laughed softly. Then her expression settled. "And us?" Ethan looked at her. Their relationship had taken a year to reach a question other people might have asked after a month. There had been coffee after school events, long conversations on the porch, Sunday groceries, and one quiet dinner alone when Lily stayed with Margaret. Nothing had been rushed. Nothing had needed to be. "I do not know exactly what comes next," Ethan said. "For once, neither do I. Does that bother you?" "Less than it used to." Ethan held out his hand. Claire looked at it before placing hers in his. There was no grand declaration, no promise large enough to frighten either of them. Just permission to continue. Lily returned, carrying Hannah's silver pendant. She climbed in her chair, took Ethan's free hand, then reached across and took Claire's. "Grandma says dessert is ready." "Grandma burned dessert," Claire corrected. "Only the edge," Margaret called from the kitchen. Lily grinned. Ethan looked around the table. His daughter, the woman who had become her aunt, the grandmother earning her place one ordinary day at a time, and Hannah's photograph resting where nobody had tried to replace it. For years earlier, Ethan had believed moving forward meant leaving something behind. He finally understood that some families were not rebuilt by forgetting who was missing. They were rebuilt by making room for everyone who remained.